Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, a bombastic Bradamante, a warrior princess of Arturian lineage, here to talk to you today about Mars in Leo. Now, Mars is the planet that determines the nature of our fighting spirit, our inner warrior archetype. No matter how high-minded, philosophical, or idealistic any of us might be, the fact is life is a battle, it is a fight, it is a struggle to survive that often means that we need to rise to challenges and have to prove ourselves. We have to fight to make something of ourselves. And to do that, we need an inherent energy, a drive, a fire within us that motivates us and gives us an idea of what our goals and purpose and sense of direction is. And Mars is really the fuel and the fire in that process. He is the engine that keeps us going. He is the wind under our wings. He is the part that when it feels it is being disrespected, reduced, or not given a fair shrift in any way, reaches for the hilt of its sword and is willing to put up a fight to rectify things. It has a sense of justice, not necessarily to the world, but to itself and what it feels it deserves. But how we all deal with the problem of conflict, of fighting, and the challenge to survive and distinguish ourselves and our superiority in some way is a highly individual thing. No two people do it in the same way, and therefore Mars placements and transits and aspects can teach us a little bit about how our own warrior energies like to express themselves, what makes us feel strong, confident, and just a little bit above the rest. Some people like to fight with guns and knives. Some people like to fight with their fists. Some people like to fight with their words and argue it out and prove their intellectual superiority. Some people prefer taking a more diplomatic approach. Other people prefer just to avoid conflict altogether and to hide away in their neat little bunker until everything dies down. Some people weaponize their beauty and their charm as a method of preventing conflict to begin with, but also as a means of getting what they want. So there are all many different ways in which Mars can disguise himself. You know, if he's in Aries, he's going to have all the braggadocio and bluster. He's going to throw himself into a situation and say, me first, pick me, I'm the best, obviously, and anyone here who disagrees about it, let's have a fight about it straight away. If you have Mars in Taurus like me, you're going to prefer to laze around in your meadowland or on your chaise lounge and just generally feel that fighting is an altogether nasty, unpleasant, disharmonious thing, and I'd much rather stay here listening to a beautiful Handel oratorio whilst reading a book whilst someone makes love to me. Let's leave the fighting to the men. I'm not interested. But we're not talking about any of those signs. We're talking about Mars and Leo. And I'll begin that by contrasting it with Mars's transit through Cancer, which is coming to an end, and how the energies of Mars in Leo displace it. Mars in Cancer is considered to be in its full because the energies of that sign are so emotionally sensitive and geared and oriented towards nurturance, love, caretaking, and affection rather than conflict, that to actively separate yourself from someone else through coming to blows with them is antithetical to the Cancer nature that wants to feel very snug and close and almost inseparable from something it loves. So to actively seek out strife or trouble or turbulence or challenges of any way is something that makes it deeply uncomfortable because it is so receptive and impressionable to the emotional energies around it. It can be hurt very easily. And if by nature you are very thin-skinned and prone to feeling pain and having that pain amplified far above that of the ordinary person, you're generally going to develop a pain-avoidant attitude. And anything that even remotely smacks of pain and discomfort and displeasure is going to be something that you are going to be hyper-vigilant to wanting to avoid miles and years in advance. So if we imagine Mars in Cancer in his great Arturian castle, and he sat there in one of the ramparts, kind of looking dreamily and whimsically out of the window, out onto this magical fairy tale landscape. And he can see distant hills in the distance where there are different monsters and dragons he could fight, riches that he could win. But he thinks, I'm just not feeling up to it. I'm feeling so sensitive, so moody, so weak. You know, I don't feel strong enough to fight those things. I think it'd be much better if I just stayed here and let someone else do that. And then maybe he sees a beautiful damsel and he thinks, well, I could go out and seduce the damsel and make love to her, but she's probably just going to think I'm too much of a wimp or a mummy's boy. And really, if I'm being honest with myself, I would like that princess to mother me rather than the other way around. So there's no point trying, is there? You know, maybe I'll feel a bit more up to it tomorrow, but right now I think it's best that I stay inside my shell, my carapace, that I remain within my armor, because it's a dark, dangerous, difficult world out there, and I don't think I want to get embroiled with it. That's not what I am made for. You know, I am made for the hearth and the home, not for donning the warrior helmet. However, the one instance where Mars in Cancer does come alive is when it sees something that is weak, vulnerable, and selfless, that either it suddenly feels inspired to look after, or if it sees something that it loves being hurt or injured or abused by someone else in some way, that is when all of the martial fire will suddenly start going throbbing through its veins, and it can actually display quite a terrifying face of the warrior energy, going from Moomin Mama to the wrathful aspect of Kali in very short notice. You know, it might be indifferent to the far-off dragons and the damsels in distress, but if it looks out the window and it sees someone kicking a puppy, well, you better make sure that you're not on the wrong side of that boot. Mars in Leo, however, he is all about the dramatic. He is all about the heroic quest. He is not going to hide himself away. You know, the moon, the ruler of Cancer, rules dreams, rules the unconscious, rules the nebulous, mystical ocean of the night. She's always waxing and waning, sometimes showing you herself and then sometimes disappearing again. But the sun is flamboyant. It wants to be seen. It wants to be radiant. It wants to have its specialness acknowledged in everything that it does. And so if Mars in Leo is going to be motivated to leave the castle, it has to feel that whatever vision or quest or journey or adventure or challenge comes its way will make it look good, will put it in a good light, which will bring it out to advantage, which will make it seem like a truly wonderful, special individual. It wants to be the best in whatever field in which it chooses to distinguish itself. It's not happy coming second or just being another also-ran that blends into the grey morass of the rest of society. It wants someone to look at it and go, wow, that's something. That's a Hercules, that's a hero. So whilst Mars in Cancer may remain at home until peaceable times are restored and generally reject or renege on any challenges from the outside world that come its way, Mars in Leo is generally going to want to rise to them because it is a chance to show off their special talents, their special skills, to demonstrate the originality of whatever abilities or personal powers that they possess. They will generally have a yes and affirmative notion to life. But also they've got to make sure that whatever they are being asked to do is something that in some way is something only they could do. They don't want to do the menial labor. They don't want to do the grunt work. They want to be called in to demonstrate expertise, to do something with flair and showmanship that will garner them some kind of applause. So if Mars in Leo is sitting in his castle, maybe writing a play, maybe tuning his lute for some great epic poem or ode that he is about to recite, and he hears a knock on the door and he thinks, oh gosh, when will those peasants leave me be? Can't they tell that I'm trying to pursue my muse? Courier, go to the door. Sorry, concierge, go to the door where you should already be. You're a concierge, and find out what the devil they want. Of course, they usher that person in with much fanfare and ceremony, and whoever the messenger is says, Mars and Leo, there's a dragon fighting out there. You know, he thinks for a moment, he thinks, you know, dragon, it's pretty heroic, you know, not everyone can beat a dragon, but I don't want them to think that I'll give in straight away, that my services are too easily won. I want him to know that I'm special, that he's not just going to get me effortlessly, that I'm just someone he can call on day and night. So, you know, maybe I'll be aloof for a minute, I'll say dismissive, because dragon? No, a dragon is far beneath my notice. Can't you see that I am creating art here? I don't have time for dragons. And then the messenger, realizing he needs to pour on the flattery, says, well, you know, we've tried everyone else, but everyone else is just too weak. No one's as strong or as magnificent as you, Mars and Leo. And Mars and Leo says, well, how nice of you to notice. I am strong and I am magnificent. And you know what? I'm also the best dragon slayer this damn city's ever seen. Get out of the way. Let me show you how it's done. All those other knights, they don't know what they're doing. But me, not only do I know how to slay a dragon, I know how to slay a dragon and do it in style. And so he summons up all of his knight servants to get him ready. He gets on his beautiful horse, that of course is a rare breed that never one's ever seen before, and which is just radiating pure equine handsomeness. He dons his sparkling bespoke armor that glistens and can be seen scintillating on the horizon for miles around. He gets his bespoke weapons in hand, which are flashing with neon and encrusted with jewels, and he says, now I am ready to slay a dragon. So again, unlike its Cancerian sibling, Mars in Leo actually thrives off of conflict and challenge and disagreements and struggles and competitions to some degree, because all of those things can act as possible arenas in which it has to fight to prove itself, to prove that it is better than the rest. You know, these are things that could make it shine with greater splendor rather than potentially being sources of hurt. And because Leo, being a fiery sign, is connected to the imagination, is connected with the ability to envisage a greater future, every possible contest or competition or difficulty or challenge that comes along is all going to be seen in that light as something that could offer it greater self-magnification and aggrandization. It's going to say, you know, this could be the thing that helps me make it, that makes me famous, that helps me meet the love of my life. It sees all of those things as being sparkling possibilities that will magnify itself rather than being a source of injury. And because it is heroic and identifies with the dramatic narrative of its conquests rather than with the weaknesses and frailties of its own physical being, it's also not as afraid of pain in general, because it recognizes that pain and getting hurt and going on anyway is part of the valor of what makes a hero. So such things will not deter it. It realizes that for anything to be meaningful, there has to be a hazard involved. You can't have a competition unless there is the possibility of losing. But in general, it tries to approach life with the optimism and of a kind of self-glorifying child, and to assume that I will win. And if I go in with the attitude that I will win and outdo everyone else, then a lot of the time it will be true, because our characters do determine our fate and the nature of experiences that we have. And if we have a temperament that is by nature withdrawn and self-denigrating and not willing to put itself out there, there's going to be less times in life in which we achieve any kind of glory or acclaim or accolade, because we haven't put ourselves in a position where that could actually be recognized or celebrated. But if, like Mars in Leo, we're consistently putting ourselves out there, we're consistently engaging with all of the fertile turmoil of life, then chances are at some point we're going to come out trumps. At some point we're going to win. I think one of the dangers of Mars in Leo is its tendency to overdo things. Because it always sees everything in life on that big, grand, mythic, royal scale that is fit for queens and kings, and it knows it is a queen and king, but maybe a little too much for everyone else. It often lacks delicacy and refinement in how it approaches things. You know, it can be a bit too brash, there can be a bit too much bluster. You know, it can see something that is a normal, delicate operation that requires patience and tact and gentleness and refinement of vision and the ability to do things calmly and collectedly, and somehow try and turn it into an operatic aria. It's not enough just for it to be an ordinary event, you know. If it's going to make toast, it might even try and turn that into a dance. You know, it has to inject some level of magic into the mundane, otherwise life doesn't seem worth leading. But there are some situations where that kind of overblown bluster is too much. You know, I have Jupiter and Venus in Leo, and the Jupiter is sextile my Taurus and Mars. And the amount of times when I've been in a theatrical mood entertaining people and I've gotten carried away and we've been at the bar and I've felt like doing a big grand dramatic sweep and have accidentally knocked everyone's drinks off the table, occurs far more often than it should. You know, it doesn't always understand the need for moderation because it prefers flamboyance, it prefers extravagance. You know, Leo is the sign of just after midsummer, where everything is bright and everything is flourishing and fun, and we have all those festivals. And Mars in Leo feels that in order for life to be worth the energies that it is very passionately willing to put into it, then life has to be a festival too. It has to be rising to these big humorous, jovial heights that it is always living at. And if it's told to temper itself, to just be okay with the ordinary routine humdrum world that Taurus finds so comfortable, it's gonna get upset. It's like, I am here, I am a performer on the stage of life, I need to shine, I need to be seen, and instead you want me to sweep the floor and mop like everyone else. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to celebrate the fact that I am alive when I could just as easily be devoured by the draconic forces of darkness. I am alive, and I want every part of my life to be pleasant and enjoyable and fun and self-fulfilling in some way. That is what motivates me. That possible self-splendor is what gets me out of the bed. And if I don't get the rewards that I crave, if I don't get the recognition, then Mars in Leo is capable of being depressed, like Mars in all of the fire signs, perhaps least of all Sagittarius. It needs some victory and self-affirmation from the world that justifies and mirrors its own heroic image back to itself. And if it doesn't get that, then it can feel that life has been a big betrayal, that life promised it glamour and riches and abundance, and instead all it got was the same shitty, bar-coded, dull, grey, generic life that everyone else had. You know, that's not what it signed up for. So it needs to find ways in which it does have an outlet for that energy, in which it can find a sphere in which it can truly prove itself to be the best. But it also has to realize that it can't just take that self-grandiosity as a given. If it wants to be recognized as the best, it needs more than just its royal birthright. It also needs to work and develop those nascent talents so it has something that truly is special, that is shining because a lot of work has been put into polishing it. And it's that ultimate need for refinement, for the careful detail of craftsmanship, which is why the energies of Leo eventually do give way to the energies of Virgo, because kings don't want to deal with the small everyday details of things. That's what their servants are for. But if Mars in Leo wants to serve itself, it does have to find some kind of balance there. And the other difficulty of Mars in Leo is that it can identify so strongly with its own desires and goals that it often doesn't recognize that other people have their desires and goals too, and not everyone in the world is a member of their court existing just to glorify and celebrate them and make life this big song and dance. They can somehow feel that, yeah, I'm here, I'm the leader, I'm the king, I'm in rule, and everyone should just be on standby at a moment's notice to execute whatever great plan or vision or narrative that I have in place. My mother has Mars in Leo, and that does sum her up to a T. She is a magnificent organizer. She makes better parties and spectacles than anyone else, but she can turn even just the simple task of taking a parcel to the post office into some kind of military plan, you know. We're not just returning some clothes that she bought and which didn't fit her or that she didn't like. We are engaged in some kind of covert FBI operation, and everyone must be in standby until this has been completed. You know, there's no normality or any taint of the everyday, and even just these ordinary tasks for Mars and Leo, all of them are potentially grand victories and therefore have to be injected with this high level of passion to make them feel they're not worthwhile. Because if life is not willing to rise to the the dramatic level that it needs in order to feel that life is worth willing, then Mars in Leo is ready to find the drama and to make it. So when other people express their own needs or desires or sensitivities that may just be relatively normal, Mars in Leo can be a bit disgusted and dismissive and feel like, well, why would those things be worth, you know, why do I have to do the washing up for you when I'm busy writing my play? You know, I'm not going to lower myself like that. So the difficulty of stepping outside of its own sunlight is one of the worst parts of Mars in Leo. It can be wonderfully generous and magnanimous, and it can be very good-humoured and willing to put a lot of energy into entertaining other people and making them laugh and being the best raconteur and making sure everyone's having a great time. But it is not always attentive to people's sensitivities or weaknesses or feelings of insecurity, because Mars in Leo doesn't want to identify with any of those things. It is afraid of the capability that those feelings have to undo us, to make us to feel weak, to try and regress us and pull us back into those stagnant waters of Cancer. You know, it understands big emotions, you know, like big courtly love and raging Orlando Furioso anger, but everyday ordinary sensitivities feel beneath it, and it scares them. It's scared by the possibility that it itself could have such small feelings that could make it weak and not strong and not powerful enough to put it out into the world. And so when it sees someone else being sensitive, it has this very annoying habit of trying to jolly everyone along. Like, oh, you're sulking, are you? Oh, you're being miserable, are you? Oh, I hate it when people sulk. And then very dramatically sulks in the most histrionic manner possible. It can't always see itself because it is too busy concerned with being seen. So if other people aren't constantly willing to be the butt of its joke or to play along with this never-ending game of look at me, aren't I great, then Mars and Leo can think that people are just being spoilsports, that they're being whiners. It doesn't take those feelings seriously. It assumes that they're coming from a weak, a negative, or a pessimistic, or a life-denying place. It doesn't recognize that actually there are some parts of the human character that are inherently mundane and petty and which need tending to just as much as the inner part of us that needs to feel that life is a drama in which we are capable of taking the center stage. So both of my parents actually have Mars in Leo. In fact, both of them have charts that are almost entirely dominated by Leonine energies, just in case you're wondering where I get it from. And no, neither of them have hair as amazing as mine. Although my mother does often like to boast that even though she's in her 60s, she's never dyed her hair once, unlike all of her friends. Whether that's true or not is not what this video is here to dispute. But my father also has Mars in Leo, as well as being a Leo himself. And while my mother represents more of the matriarchal queen, who is pushy and oppressive and a bringer of feasts who loves to be the center of attention, my father, while he will be very generous and take you out for a meal, is also... He likes to think of himself as being someone who is sensitive and caring, but it's mostly a myth, because anytime you try and speak to him about any of your inner needs or sufferings, he has to turn everything into a joke. And Mars in Leo and Leo people have this annoying feeling of saying that, oh, you know, I'm joking because I'm trying to cheer you up. I'm trying to make life more cheerful and bright, when actually they're doing it for themselves. They're doing it to make life more cheerful and bright for themselves, and also as a way of covering up their own insecurity about the fact that any depression or sadness that you might be expressing to them could actually secretly be in themselves. So let's just keep joking, and maybe we won't have to go deeper. Maybe we won't have to find what demons and sources of death and mortality lurk behind the sole invictor, the invincible Apollonian sun. Of course, no video on Mars would be complete without an exploration of sex. Mars is connected with our libido because our desire nature ultimately stems from those sexy appetites that we all have. Some of us are very comfortable identifying with them. Some of us pretend that we have nothing to do with them and then get caught in Nazi sex dungeons on camera and celebrated by the paparazzi for that. But it will come as no surprise that when it comes to the sexual act, Mars in Leo likes to think of itself as a Don Juan, as a Don Giovanni, who, because life exists to fulfill his pleasure, he is willing to find pleasure in a great many different sources. But due to its need to always play the protagonist, it takes that into the bedroom as well. And it doesn't just want to be any old lover who's come into your life, who you've welcomed into your boudoir. It wants to be the best damn lover you've ever had. It wants... when it has sex with you, when it makes love to you, it wants it to be something that is like an earth-shattering cosmic revelation for you. Something that blows away everyone else by comparison, This poor ordinary person who I've deigned to be like Apollo descending into their bedroom. They've had many lovers, but they've all been riffraff. They've all just been commoners, just mere Lotharios from the back alleys of the hoi polloi. I'm going to show them how pleasant, how magnificent, how mind-blowing, how magical and otherworldly courtship and romance and love truly can be. And by God, once I'm done with them, it's like it will have been a solar eclipse. They won't be able to think of everyone else. They will realize that all the sex they had prior to me was but a shadow. It was but an illusion. It was a pale reflection of the golden magnificence that I have introduced their loins orgasmically to. So therefore their erotic ability is a performance. You know, we talk about people having performance anxiety or the sexual performance, but for Mars and Leo, this sexual performance is very literal. You know, for it, sex can't just be this everyday bestial passion like it can be for Taurus, who puts sex on the same level that it does the meals that it eats throughout the day. It sees it as a basic human need, and therefore something that doesn't need to be elevated, that, you know, it's okay to, you know, just make cheap, earthy, ribald jokes about. To Mars in Leo, sex has the potentiality to be sacred, to be religious, to be a divine experience, to be something that is a lived poetry, and therefore it's not necessarily connected with the physical, sensual act itself, like Mars in Taurus. It's more the imaginal aspect of it, you know, and therefore role-playing, I would say, is definitely a big element of what gets Mars in Leo going. The idea that for that moment you are coming together, you are putting aside your ordinary selves, and for a moment you are being the great lovers, Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, and I'm trying to think of ones who aren't tragic and star-crossed, but my God, at least they've got glamour, which is more than Dave and Kate down the road have. You know, whoever sings operas about Dave and Kate, no one, that's who. But again, like I said, Mars in Leo is a lot more sensitive and prone to getting emotional and feeling hurt and wounded than it's willing to admit, or is often willing to even realize to itself the most of the time. And placing such huge standards on yourself as a lover to somehow be a god or a goddess in the bedroom each and every time is exhausting, and also beyond basic human capacity. You know, we've all got to be a bit lackluster every once in a while, and little slips and trips and, you know, whatever misperformances here and there might be shrugged off by other signs. But to Mars in Leo, just even one thing that just feels like it hasn't quite reached those Apollonian heights can really wound its ego in a big way. It doesn't always recognize that, you know, so much of the pleasure that we are capable of sharing with someone else, yes, much of it may be related to technique and certain romantic skills that can be learnt, but it's also just down to basic compatibility, to how your bodies and your viscera respond to someone else's, how your energies intermingle with someone else's. You know, we can come along to one person and they can experience the erotic godhead or goddess head through us, with an emphasis on the head there. Or we can find someone who, for whatever reason, just isn't mind blown by us, isn't enthralled or wrought into a state of multiple orgasms, simply because they just don't have that response from us. You know, it's not necessarily something personal, it's just bodies be bodies. Bodies do what they do and respond for reasons that we do, no matter how much extra drama and flair and flamboyance and panache and verve that we inject into the situation. So with some people with Mars in Leo, if they don't have the quality or don't feel able to give the heroic quality into the bedroom that they feel they need, they might try and make up with it in quantity. You know, if they feel that their sexual manhood or womanhood is in question, they might compensate by just sleeping with as many people as possible to kind of prove that I have still conquered these people. Even if they weren't, you know, repeat performances, at least I've still proven to myself that there is a huge audience of people out there who want me and are willing to praise me, at least for a night. Now, one of the things that I will say is good about Mars in Leo is that on that sexual, romantic, erotic level, if it loves you and it commits you, it does believe in consistently making the effort to keep that passion alive, to keep that flame burning. There are many people who are happy for a romance just to have its honeymoon period at the beginning and then to gradually fade away into comfortable routine and monotony, but that's never going to be good enough for Mars in Leo. It says no, that glory shouldn't be something that is temporary. We shouldn't just have a noonday and then a fading away to a tranquil evening. I want to keep that sun at the meridian in our love and in our passion as much as possible. And it will put a lot of effort into maintaining that. However, if it gradually starts to feel that its romantic partner is not reciprocating this, or is not grateful for the passion that it's putting in, or simply doesn't have the same libido or romantic drive that it does have, then it may begin to get the roving eye, because it needs that fun, it needs that spectacle, it needs that heightened histrionic romance. And if someone isn't willing to provide it, then even though we associate Leo with loyalty, whatever that means, its loyalty to its own mythic quest is always going to trump that. And whilst it may look sneeringly down on other people's infidelities and misdemeanors, it will always feel its own are justified, because on a heroic level it makes sense that the hero should not settle for a romance that has become second best. If it can't continue to find sexual victory and glory in its current partnership, then it will look elsewhere. Which, again, it's not bad if this is a polyamorous situation. I do know quite a lot of polyamorous people with Mars in Leo, in which case they have more of that breadth and freedom to express that passionate outpouring. But in monogamous relationships, then infidelity can definitely be the consequence of not giving this king or queen the passion that they feel is owed to them. Because the justice of Leo is not the empirical, balanced, rational, logical justice of Libra. It is poetic justice, it is poetic truth, and the ability to find that poetry in everything that it commits its actions to is what Mars in Leo is all about. Anyway, that's enough heroic endeavour for me. This Bradamante needs another cup of tea. See that? Just rhyming effortlessly now. That was my own spontaneous poetry for you. Just call me a troubadour. Or, well, you can call me anything so long as it's flattering. If you have anything you want to talk to me about, you can contact me for potential spiritual or astrological counselling at starsunraveled@outlook.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Astrology in Underwear, or you can support my own royal endeavours on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thestarsunraveled, where you can watch these videos earlier than they get given out to the riffraff on YouTube. You're not riffraff, by the way, on YouTube. I love you. I adore all of the people who watch these videos and make comments. Please share your own experiences or relationship with your own Mars on here. I would love to hear from you. Back to polishing my bespoke armour.